this season, what can I do affirmatively?
Well, Glad You Ask is returning for its sophomore season. One of YouTube Originals, the award-winning series tackles some really tough issues that many people in society are starting to think about. I'm so excited to welcome in two of the hosts, we'll say, Fabiola, Christophe with us today. Good morning to the both of you. How are you?
Good morning.
Doing well.
Great.
So let's dive in here. I want to go ladies first with this one, if you don't mind setting the stage. It is in the second season, and it's timed out so well. Glad You Asked really tackles things that a lot of people are thinking about. Where did you leave off in season one? And talk about the putting together the pieces of season two in a time when these conversations are really needed, Fabiola.
Yeah, so season two really is a response to what we saw happen across the country in 2020. It was a year where people were finally starting to confront racism within themselves, racism within their families. It was an election year. We saw just so many people, Black people, die at the hands of the police. And so season two basically gives us a space to explore structural racism, which is a huge topic that really was on the minds of the country last year.
You know, Christophe, I want to bring you here on this one. And with your background creating content and things, you know, it's interesting to see some of these questions are hard and you have to look inward to answer and really get your thoughts. But then you're also in front of a camera on this show. Talk about the dynamic of being one that's really being vulnerable and transparent, because that's what you've had to do to make this show succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something that I am grateful to the show for, is really giving us this space to be vulnerable, to have conversations that I think every team should have, every workplace should have, all family and friends should have. Being able to do that while also making a TV show out of it was incredible. But yeah, I think that there was certainly a lot of moments of kind of that tension between, like, is this, you know, these great vulnerable moments, how do we capture that? And how do we make, you know, good TV out of that as well?
Well, you've been able to do that again, and Glad You Asked. You know, two of the topics that really stood out to me that I wanted to know more about. First one, the health disparities that we see with the structural inequalities that happen in this society. What were you able to learn about that? Because just in the trailer and the screeners I was able to see, that was captivating and very alarming.
Yeah, so that's the episode that I focused in on. I mean, I think the main takeaway that I was really surprised to learn was just how much daily experiences of discrimination are quantifiable and have this very measurable impact on the chronic stress that marginalized folks feel every single day, and how that chronic stress over a lifetime builds up into you know, very, very stark health disparities in this country.
And then the other one that really caught my attention too, that I think is an episode that I definitely want to check out, neighborhoods determining one's future. Of course, you may think on the outside that, like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But then when you were able to dive down, you see how really that is alarming as well. Fabiola, you're shaking your head on that one.
Yeah, Christophe and I were in that episode, and we, in one scene, had to plug in our zip code. And that the test that we did to look at our zip code actually told us what kind of life outcomes we were likely to have. And so it was fascinating to see how where you live, where you grew up could determine so much for you.
Was that the part, I saw a clip where you were talking about, is this machine racist? Was that dealing with that part? Because that alone, that soundbite alone was like, a machine? Like, it really makes you think.
Yeah.
That was actually a different scene where our colleague Joss had my co-host Lee and I take photos together, and then we uploaded those photos to Twitter. And very consistently, Twitter would crop the images to just focus on me, the white man, instead of Lee, the Black man.
Really?
Cropping out. Yeah, I think that's one of really the strongest visual demonstrations of how things like a machine can actually have a lot of bias embedded into their systems.
So unfortunately, we only have a minute left here, and I want to get both of your thoughts as we close. Christophe, we'll start with you on this one. I'm curious what you were able to learn. You put this together, you think you know how things are going to happen as a filmmaker and someone with your background, but then able to learn on a social level. What are you taking away from this?
I think this was definitely a show where, you know, more than ever, we had to bring a lot of our personal story to the table, a lot of our own perspectives. Have a lot of moments of getting really vulnerable. So there was certainly, you know, a lot of times when I would sort of have to realize on the spot that I, had to confront certain things about myself that I hadn't thought about for a long time. And really, being able to make something out of that was a really fun challenge.
And you're hearing more and more people are asking themselves these questions. I'll be transparent. I've asked myself these questions, how racist am I? How do I make changes in my life? I mean, you try to tackle these things. And one thing, Fabiola, I want you to end on that I thought was fascinating about your background. You've been a teacher before at a very important age, 7th grade. As we move forward, what message, if you could step back into the classroom, would you want to share with those students and you really want people to take away from Glad You Asked?
I want people to take away, and especially if I were talking to my 7th graders, that we all have work to do. We're all a part of this conversation, and we need to take time to just reflect on ourselves and reflect on how we can be better and how we can help each other just get the best out of life.
And again, this show does that. Glad You Asked, one of YouTube's originals. It is award-winning, makes people think, and hopefully making a change in the way society is. Thank you to the both of you. I really appreciate your time today.